All right. I think everything's looking good. Welcome. Welcome to the Null News. For those of you who are new, this is where I go over the news that I find for the week. And yeah, we cover everything from security vulnerabilities to the cloud news, and then on to some engineering articles that I found interesting and thought I would share with you. At the very end, we cover an open source topic with a category, and you get an input on it. This week, we're talking about what I think and what some of you thought are going to be the most pivotal open source projects of 2023. In For next week, if you want to leave a message leave a comment, or you can join the Slack, or not Slack, the Discord channel. In Discord, I'll create a thread, and you can leave a message there with what you think. But we're going to talk about what we think the best Rust open source projects. I've just released the beginning of my Rust class, and so I want to go over and talk about some of the most awesome Rust open source projects that you can use in your Rust project. Probably going to make a video of that later for the Rust class, just so people know some of the high level projects that you can use. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's get on. Let's get on with the stuff. I started this year. It's a very rough start. I started streaming on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I said maybe Saturdays. I'm hoping this upcoming Saturday I will. I started streaming just some work. We're going to work on some stuff. One of those things, which is the very first thing that we're doing, is trying to auto-generate a timeline for this news. So if you want to join and watch that, yeah, join. The links are in the description of this. And you can see I actually have it planned out with what some of the stuff that we're doing. We're trying to learn some machine learning this year. Definitely throwing some of that on there. That's actually the way that we think we're going to solve this auto timeline generator, YouTube timeline generator, is doing that. Now, obviously, if you've watched some of that, I have a networking issue on Arch. So yeah, we'll see if we can't get that resolved as well. And hopefully a lot of videos are made from the stuff we do live on stream. So that's the idea there. And you can see here are some of the ideas. This is the actual work we're doing. We'll track it, and I'm going to make this public as well so you guys can see and keep up with it. All right, let's get on with the security for this week. All right, so Circle CI had an issue. The fastest CI platform available, the most comprehensive free plan anywhere. But yesterday, we let customers know that we were in the process of rotating GitHub auth tokens on behalf of customers. And the reason this happened was they had a large security incident that you should be aware of if you're doing it. You need to definitely, yeah. So there's a lot of information here. This will be in the description. They released a lot of information on Twitter. Hopefully, if you're using Circle CI, you've seen this and have taken care of what you need to. Good on them. They made it very public very quickly. And so I thought that they did a really good job of covering everything. They went into in-depth of their security alert, not only posting it on Twitter, but the blast radius and stuff seemed very well covered. You can go ahead and click on these and check that out. But they also kept everyone up to date with quick responses and things like that. So I was pretty happy with this as far as security responses go. I didn't see any big blaring issues on this, and thought they did a really good job of letting people know. So good on them. All right, hackers use CAPTCHA bypass to make 20,000 GitHub accounts in a month. So yeah, this was interesting because they were bypassing CAPTCHAs to make accounts. So basically, CAPTCHAs are the things that are there to make sure that you're not a bot making accounts, and they were able to bypass it. This is why defense in layers is so important. If you depend on any one thing, I think that's what this proves here. You depend on any one thing, and that can be vulnerable. This was a really interesting read for me. Can you trust your VS Code extensions? And, I thought that this blog did a really good point here, because they actually pointed out, if you go down here, this is not the real one. And if you actually look at its link, you can tell that it's not actually the right one. And yeah, so basically, VS Code extensions have a lot of power, and they go into the power that they have. So I think here, this means that an extension can install any program on your computer, including ransomwares, wipers, and more. In fact, they can even alter all your code that you have locally, and even use your SSH key to change the code in your organization repository in GitHub. So GitHub plugins have a lot of power, and I think that this points out that you need to be careful. Anything of this can be a middleware attack. And they also go into saying, like, while this verified by Microsoft.com blue checkmark is good, it is possible to spoof this. Now, Microsoft goes through great extent to make sure that they don't. And they go into the impersonation here, which is this, but they also go into like what Microsoft does, which they do quite a bit. So if you go into the can I trust Microsoft extensions from the marketplace, they do a lot, but they also have a way for you to issue to basically say that you see an issue with one of the plugins. But this was actually really cool. If they find a malicious extension, they actually remove it from the marketplace, but it is added to a kill list. And basically Visual Studio will uninstall it if it's on that kill list. So if they find one and verify that there is a malicious extension, they're actually going to try to protect your machine from it and kill it as fast as they can. It doesn't mean that it hasn't already done the problem. If it's a wiper or if it encrypts your drive, it's already done it's already done the deed. But so Microsoft works hard at it. And this was by far not a thing saying like Visual Studio Code extensions are the worst, but they are pointing out that you need to be careful, and that they already have been cases of bad things in them. So it's good to know. Good to know. All right. I scanned every package on PyPy and found 57 live AWS keys. That's horrifying. So basically, PyPy, popular Python place, they found AWS keys. Very, very, very simply. They go into how they did it. And then they tell you how to automatically scan with GitHub Actions. So this was really good. If you do go on PyPy, you should have something automatically scanning. Now, Dependabot will do that for you. But if you're worried about that, they actually go into how to just make an action that scans for these AWS keys yourself. Especially if you don't have access to Dependabot for whatever reason. I know that if you're an open source project, they give you Dependabot for free. So, go ahead and use that and enable it. And the most important part here is that it should be a blocking push if a blocking on the merge a pull request if a key is found. Because you can make it scan it all day long on pull request, and it doesn't matter if you're just ignoring those. You need it to actually block. All right. And you know what? Like, I understand there's this whole thing where like you can't ask the open source community to do anything because they're doing it for free. And I respect that. But I would strongly argue for open source maintainers, if you're building a package for PyPy, there are people that use that, and it's really important to think about your users. If you didn't want users, don't publish it to PyPy. And that's fine. I completely respect that. If you're like, well, if they want the Python, they can go get it. That's fine with me. I don't care. But if you are going to PyPy, I think it's really good to do, the easy things, because this is you thinking about the users you're publishing it to PyPy for. Also, for this is protecting you. If you have an AWS account, you can get thousands of dollars spent on it maliciously by your leaked key. So not only is this protecting your users from a supply chain attack, but it's also protecting you from possibly thousands of dollars. So it's really important for you, for your users. I think it's a good thing. And Dependabot's really easy to set up. That being said, you guys know that I love Rust, but I am also fair. So, Rust projects are open to a denial of service thanks to Hyper. Now, on a good note, the big things that use Hyper, like Axiom, Slavo, and Conduit Hyper, have all been updated already, but there's a lot of things that use Hyper. Now, you might think, how can something be open to a denial of service attack? Because pretty much anything can be DDoS. This was my thought when I first read this. I was like, anything can be DDoS. It doesn't have to be a mistake in code, because all you have to do is overflow my bandwidth that I can't request or accept any more requests. But Hyper actually did something pretty interesting that basically made it really easy. I don't even think it was open to a distributed denial of service, just a denial of service. Basically, a single computer could take it down, not a DDoS, just a DOS, just a denial of service. And that was from the 2 bytes and how it used it. So JFrog did this research and found that basically this 2 bytes kind of blindly accepted what the content header was and copied those bytes, which actually made it where you could take the server down in just one request. You could literally just take it offline with one request. Pretty bad. They have been updated. This is fantastic. It was a good write-up by JFrog. This is a nice overview article if you're like wondering what the denial of service was. And yeah, definitely check it out. And good job on the projects that really picked this up from JFrog and fixed it. So JFrog worked with them to fix it. JFrog did a nice in-depth of like how to actually make the attack on it. Yeah, so anyways. And how to resolve it. So if you're using Hyper and you use 2 bytes, they actually have how to not have this problem. So cool, awesome. Rust projects are getting even better. All right, PyTorch discloses malicious dependency chain compromise over the holidays. Oh my gosh, holidays. I don't know why I struggled so much with that sentence. PyTorch has identified a malicious dependency in the same name as a framework's Torchtreon library. So basically, there's somebody like trying to get you to use theirs based off of PyTorch. So it was targeting the PyTorch nightly users. All right, we already talked about that. Oh, I wanted to talk about this. I read this, and it was a good job, Internet. You bullied NFTs out of the mainstream games. And, I don't really support online bullying because it happens way too much. Although real bullying, I think, was worse, but I don't know. Actually, maybe not. Anyways, it doesn't matter. At first, I was like, oh, that kind of stinks. You shouldn't bully something that you dislike. But the more I found articles like this, Twitch streamer and NFT founder admits to gambling away investors' funds, the more frauds like you see of what was it, Paul Logan's. The problem with NFTs was they were basically a way to scam people anyways. If you look at it, like, what value did they bring? And so, like, the thing is, it's not really bullying if you find a legitimate reason why. It's like Tornado Cash. Tornado Cash, which was actually sanctioned, which was obviously worse than this, there were people that tried to stand up for it, but the problem was it was legitimately used to launder money. That was its purpose, was money laundering. And so I don't think that's bullying. I think that puts it as a wrong wrong word for it. But anyways. All right, Rackspace had a interesting ransomware incident caused by a 0-day exploit. So yeah, Rackspace, which is I would say is a pretty major player in Racks, had this Microsoft Exchange Server Elevation of Privilege vulnerability. And unfortunately, it was a 0-day, which means they were hit by it before it was actually popularized or patched by Microsoft. Now, this has been patched at this point, so you can go and update it. I don't know why Microsoft, I think it's because Microsoft Exchange is used so much, like people are always looking for vulnerabilities in it. But Rackspace was was hurt badly by this. You can go and read all of Rackspace's stuff here. They wrote a lot, and I think that they did a really good job. This was a horrible incident on their part. Like, when your customer's data gets encrypted on you, it's absolutely just horrifying. And I think they did a really good job explaining it, breaking it down, working with Microsoft on the issue, and going through it. So again, this is just it can happen to anyone. Don't think that you are above and beyond this. This is why you have backups of your data, and this is why you have backups that are in a different location, not even the same AWS account. You can't say, oh, I have an S3 backup in that. Well, that's great. That's in the same house. Even if it's in a different region, I don't care. That's in the same house. If that gets compromised, you need a backup somewhere else. And this is why I brought this out and I wanted to talk about it, is because you need to have, this is precisely why this happens, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. It was an unknown CVE. Well, I guess you could not use Microsoft Exchange. That's probably that's actually the real moral of the story here, is don't use Microsoft Exchange. But the fact is, there's going to always be 0 days, and you need to make sure that you're protected by that. And then one of the best ways is have multiple copies. I think that's beating a dead horse. I can move on. All right. This was an interesting one. So banking malware being spread by macOS. Honestly, macOS does not spread that much malware, and so I was kind of surprised by this one. Yeah. Anyways, I just found that interesting. All right. We saw this happen last year as well. So these ransomware gangs hit hospitals, and I'm happy. I'm not happy that the hospital was hit, but the ransomware offered them a free decryptor, which was really, really good on them. I mean, they shouldn't be doing it anyways, because you know what? Sick kids, a children's hospital is like the lowest of the scum. But doing this to just anybody is also pretty scummy. So, but at least they have some level of morality that they won't cross, which is good. All right. Synology. So this is a pretty popular home. So I wanted to bring this up if you guys. I mean, Synology also has not home, but like rack-mounted NAS solutions. So they're pretty popular. It was a 10 out of 10. We don't see that very often. It's usually 9.8. But they had a 10 out of 10 security vulnerability. That was affecting their routers configured to run as VPN servers. Now, again, I said that they pretty popular NAS, home NAS. I don't think that their routers are really that popular in the home. So this is probably more of an enterprise thing, but this is a bad security because it leaves your networks vulnerable. So it's definitely one to be looking out for. Another phishing attack. So this is actually one that I've been looking at maybe getting, is the Flipper Zero. The Flipper looks like an interesting little tool. to learn with, and it's marketed as a learning tool. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's a good learning tool, or do you think that it's making hacking too easy for script kiddies? macOS is a great target now for hackers, as there is a very good chance the victim is a developer and therefore a higher chance they have access to servers somewhere. Actually, that's a really great call out. A lot of developers do like macOS, and if you're talking about a supply chain attack, that's actually a really great call out, Russell, is that if you're trying to supply chain attack, a developer is a really good place to supply chain hack. But yeah, good call out. What about the Flipper Zero? What do you guys think? I've kind of wanted to play around with it because I think like some of the best security is understanding how those things work. And you all know that I'm not a great hacker or anything, but I do know some of the tools at least. I know Nmap. That's like the one tool I know. And yeah, so I think that it's always good to know those things. Oh wait. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like doing those things anyways without the little Flipper Zero is easy enough. So I don't know that it really makes the bar to entry that much lower. I think I just lost internet on my computer. It shouldn't actually affect you all. I actually have a problem with I actually have a problem with Arch Linux right now with a driver. That's actually one of the things where I'm switching over to the wireless. I found that if I'm on the wired and then I switch over to the wireless, it will buy me some time. So I'm going to do that so I can see chat. Fantastic. It shouldn't interrupt the stream because I actually stream off of another PC. Yeah. Yeah, they are sold out from what I found. I couldn't find one myself, the little Flipper Zeros. But yeah, I don't know. All right. And hello, Gregory. How are you doing? Let's talk about cloud news now. All right. I think that that's how they're phishing, where they're emailing people that they're saying they're back in stock as they rush to buy. Oh boy. All right, let's jump into cloud news. We have some interesting stuff going on, some not interesting stuff going on. All right, let's talk about this. GCP pretty much had nothing again, so this is the second week they've skipped their update. I didn't see anything in the Googles either. I kind of Googled for them. I didn't find anything that that was really that interesting that happened. Let's see. Azure did have a couple of things. So they had the general availability of the Apache Log4j 2 sync to Azure Data Explorer. So this is not this is a sync for Log4j, not something to do with the vulnerability that was like, I guess it was a year ago, pretty much now. It was like last Christmas time. But yeah. Yes, Gregory, I was talking about Flipper Zero. I was thinking about trying to get one myself. Just to maybe make a video about or something. I want to make some fun videos this year. I don't know. I don't make many fun videos, as my stats tell me. So yeah, anyways. So yeah, it's just a Data Explorer. I thought that was nice. Azure Sphere support for European data boundary is now generally available. So that's the EU data boundary. A private preview of featured clothing. I was intrigued when I saw this. Um, this is an ML thing, the featured clothing this preview is. So basically, with featured clothing insight, you are able to identify key items worn by individuals within videos. So basically, they have this whole cognitive service with ML, and this is basically going to allow you to feed it video and get the featured clothing from that video. Obviously, I have my American Giant hoodie and I have my Null t-shirts. I don't think it would work on me, especially since my hoodie is so worn out. Yeah, but so it wasn't as interesting as I was hoping it was, but it's still out there. If that's something that you need, it's nice that it exists. All right, public preview of the Azure Cosmos DB v2 connector for Power BI. So if you're looking for, if you use their Power BI, you now have the version 2 for their Cosmos DB connector, which should make it better. I don't use this, so I can't really tell you. As you all know, Azure is my least best subject on the clouds, but I am learning, so I hopefully will be able to give more insight into this. On the AWS side of things, Amazon EC2 auto scaling now forecasts frequently for more accurate predictive scaling. This actually is pretty nice. So if you're using their auto scaling, what it's doing is it's taking that forecast more frequently. So it used to actually have quite a delay between it, and it wouldn't update fast enough to then do your predictive scaling for you. So now it forecasts more frequently, so it can do the predictive scaling at a better time. Hopefully, that's the idea. So that seems pretty useful, to be honest. Pretty useful. Amazon. You can now use a new version of Apache Airflow in the Amazon Managed Workflows for Apache Airflow. So the MWAA, which is not a fighting league, but it now allows you to use version 2.4, which is a pretty big change. It's pretty nice that they support those in there. Amazon announced the Elastic Fabric Adapter installer for version 1.21. Not a big deal. Just thought I'd throw it out. These next ones are just more instances. So I pulled up all the instances. So as the new instances were released, I just like calling it out because they slowly propagate out through the internet, and this is where you can find them. And that's pretty awesome. So, yeah, we have the Amazon EC2, the R6G. Basically, the G instances are now available in additional regions. The M6s are now available in US West. That's kind of been a slow rollout of the M6s. I thought those would be faster. And the R6Is, which are pretty cool. These are pretty good for storage, being built on the AWS Nitro system. The AWS Nitro system is the best cloud storage system. It's a little bit rough to use. Like GCP's is nicer, but it's also less performant. It's easier to use. You can connect and just how much drives you want instead of being a fixed size. But this is so much more performant as well as more stable. There's hiccups in GCPs for sure. Application autoscaling now offers better visibility into scaling decisions. This kind of ties back into what we were seeing about the autoscaling here. But this is basically giving you more visibility. Obviously, they're working on their autoscaling. This is just giving you more visibility into that. And then Amazon S3 encrypts new objects by default. This probably should have been at the beginning. I think that this is really important. Now, the thing is, this has been available for like 12 years. Yeah, encryption was first launched in 2011. That would be 12 years. But all that they're doing is saying that it's on by default, meaning that your data will be encrypted by default. Now, I'm just going to warn you all right now. I lost internet for good now until I restart. I'm not going to restart right now. I might restart at the end because I can restart my computer because, again, my Mac Mini is the one actually streaming it, but I can't see your chat. So this was a horrible idea. I should have done it on Windows until we fix this problem. I'm not sure what it is, but tune in Tuesday if you want to see me debugging Arch Linux. That will be fun. Go ahead and like this video if you'd like to see Arch Linux be debugged. And go ahead and don't hit that thumbs down button. If you wouldn't like to see it, just leave a comment that says you wouldn't, because YouTube likes comments. All right. So Amazon S3 server-side encryption handles all encryption, decryption, and key management. It's very good. And it handles it in a totally transparent way. Hopefully not too transparent, because that's key management. Don't want that too transparent. Jokes aside, this is good. I think making security the default is good. And this should have been done 12 years ago. And the last thing of Amazon news is Amazon Sidewalk adds new partners and plans to open up to developers soon. So I didn't actually see this, but I read this article. I assume TechCrunch knows what they're talking about. Amazon Sidewalk is something we talked about earlier, and I actually specifically called out then that it seemed like it was only something Amazon could use, and thus it was useless to the rest of us. That was one of my complaints about it, and it seems that Amazon heard me, cares specifically about me and my opinions. And no, they've never contacted me. And no, I don't think that they believe or care about my opinions, but it looks like they are now going to open it up where you could use Amazon Sidewalk. And Amazon Sidewalk is basically where all of their smart speakers and everything are going to be basically rebroadcasting the internet to allow other things to use it. It seems a little dangerous, but I'm interested. I'm interested because it would be a way that you could have internet on your IoT, like low bandwidth devices, pretty usefully. So let's see where it goes, and I'm interested into seeing more on this. I'm sure right now Russell is saying something about IoT devices hacking your network. Again, if you use IoT devices, I think they should be on their own network, not on your personal network. Get some professional gear, put a new VLAN, throw those IoT devices in that VLAN, and only allow them to be on that VLAN. You know what the one thing that stinks about that? Unless if you also put your TV on that VLAN, then they can't connect to the TV because you segregated their networks. And then if you put your TV on that VLAN, now it's on a separate network from all your other stuff. So then if you want to cast something to your TV from your computer, you can't because it's separated. But then you can actually open up a hole from your home network to the VLAN of that, just not from the IoT network. So it gets a little complicated, but you can actually get it set up where they're on a separate VLAN, but you have the conveniences of being able to access them from your main VLAN, but they can't access your network. So that's what I do, although I don't really have many IoT devices in the house. Sorry, that was a rant. My apologies. Let's move on. All right. I saw this. I thought it was interesting. It's kind of part of the cloud news because Kubernetes. And you know what? I need to apologize. I've been meaning to make the new Kubernetes release video, and I haven't done it because I was really focused on Rust. We had stuff happen all of December with freezing weather and no heat, and it got lost. And so, I'm a month behind on that video. And I'm going to work hard to make it out this week. So you guys will have your Kubernetes release notes. There were some interesting things in there. And sorry I missed that. Sorry that kind of fell under the rug. That's not a saying. I don't think it is. Fell off the board. I don't know. I screwed up. There we go. I will be getting that out. Yeah. So anyways, native Java with Gravel, VM, and virtual threads on Kubernetes. I don't run Java. I haven't touched Java since my early days in programming when I was like an Android developer, which isn't the enterprise Java that these people are talking about. But this was an interesting thing, was basically using virtual threads to build a native image with GravelVL, and then use that on Kubernetes in an efficient way. So I'm putting this out here, and I'll throw the link in there. If you are a Java engineer and do those types of things, then I think this could be really useful, and definitely you should check it out. Moving on, the last thing in the cloud news was TestCube. It's a brand new cloud out there. I haven't signed up for it. I was going to actually sign up for it live on stream, but since I don't have internet now on this computer, not signing up for it live on stream. But we should play around with it. I just found out about it, and I'm guessing it has stuff to do with testing Kubernetes, so I'm kind of excited about it. I don't exactly know what it is, though. So we're definitely going to have to check it out, see if I can't get an interview with them to popularize what they're trying to do and how they're going to help. I'm kind of excited about not knowing what this is. All right, let's see. Meat Calc. Oh, okay, so let's talk about Linux. Let's talk about Linux for just a second. Actually, while we're talking about Linux, I'm going to see if I can't pull up the stream on my tablet so that I have chat again. Sorry about this. I should have done this knowing that this would happen. I wasn't thinking about chat. I was like, it's going to be fine. And it is fine. I can still stream it. But the fact is, it's not fine because I can't see chat. And I love... You guys bait me a lot. I know. But... Oh. Let's turn the sound down. Okay, I gotta search for my own channel. Oh, there we go. I'm a handsome devil. All right, I shouldn't talk about myself. Okay, there we go. Oh. See, I knew Russell would abuse this, so no one is watching the comments now. Now we can do whatever we want. Oh, Russell, you dirty man. I did not say that about Python for anybody watching. I did not say this was the year of Python. We're not to the open source projects of 2023. So don't listen to Russell when I'm not around. He's generally very good when I'm around, but anyways. No, he's not on his best behavior when I'm around. When I'm around, he just picks on me. So you're good. Okay, so that being said, there was a couple things. Sorry about the internet issues. I am working on it. Like I said, join me Tuesday if you'd like. There are 2 new Linux distributions. Now, I see a lot of Linux distributions. I think a lot of times not a whole lot stick and have massive adoption, like your Ubuntu's, your Fedoras, your OpenSUSE's, or even your Arches. But there was 2 new ones just this last week, at least new that I've seen. So there's Calculate Linux here, which I don't know that much about it. Really, I just saw this pop up, and that's about it, from like 10 days ago. Like, they just said Meet Calculate Linux 23, like it was a new release, but it's the only release I can find. On top of that, we have another brand new one, Vanilla Linux, which I think Russell actually put the best spin on it. It seems like people who want the stability of Ubuntu, but want the bleeding edge of Arch. I think maybe that's what it is. I'm not really sure. I haven't tried using it. Now, if Arch keeps failing me, maybe I'll use it. But my goal is to just use Arch. I'm actually learning a lot with Arch, and I encourage everybody to learn a lot. And it's making me better at Linux. I'm getting much more familiar with debugging Linux kernel module issues. Learning a bunch of new commands, actually. So it's been good for me. But yeah, so there we go. I guess it's good for gaming. We'll see. We'll see. I'm interested in knowing if any of you have used it or know of anybody that's using it. All right. So this I found interesting. So this was kind of, I think this goes back to a topic that we've had in the Discord where we were kind of like, is Rust going to make it? And if Rust was going to make it, it really was going to depend on it was really going to depend on a large company really adopting. And then we saw Microsoft come through and really adopt Rust. We've seen Google adopt it in the Android open source project. We've seen AWS adopt Rust. We've seen a lot of people really buy into Rust, and I think we need to see that from RISC-V as well. We really need to see somebody fully buy into it. Now, this isn't it. This isn't the full sell-in that we need for RISC-V to be a thing. Google wants RISC-V to be a tier 1 Android architecture. To be a tier 1 architecture. This means that they want full support for RISC-V in Android. That doesn't mean that we get the full buy-in. What I'd really like to see is the next Pixel phone be a RISC processor, a processor designed by Google to run Android and be really fast. We need to see that level of support before I think RISC really comes out. Or somebody like Intel who makes a hardware accelerator based off of RISC-V or something like that. That's what we really need to see before we have that full sell-in support. But this is a good first step, because now if it is a tier 1 supported architecture, that gives people more reason to actually do that and actually go that direction. So I'm really happy with this, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. I'm sorry about the internet issues on my computer. I know that this is not the best environment, best way to handle this. If I don't have them solved by next week, this stream will be on my Windows PC or on the Windows install, so that we don't have these issues. I apologize for that. Russell called it out as risky, and he was right. I shouldn't have done it. Sorry about that. I think I brought up this article. Just wanted to bring it up again because I wasn't sure that I shouted out. This is a really cool article by Cloudflare. On how servers on how the servers share IP addresses. The servers share IP addresses, and like their servers don't own an IP address anymore. It's a really cool article. I read it again and I was like, this is really cool. I like it. I think Cloudflare does a really one of the best technical blogs where they go into enough detail that you feel like you could implement it, but they don't actually implement anything. So yeah, I liked it. Wanted to point it out. I'm going to throw it in the chat. Sorry if this is old news that I feel like I've pushed this on you guys before, so sorry about that. All right, talking about Rust, I found Samsara. I should have tried to pronounce that beforehand. Have no idea if I'm pronouncing it right. All right, this I'm going to bust out this for. Let me see. Yeah, I'm going to bust out this. So basically, the complaint here is, and actually, let's go back to here. Actually, I'm going to just put this tab in this up here. Yeah. So you'll find a couple projects like this. So you can find Shredder. There's another one. This is a garbage collector for Rust. And you're going to be like, oh, why does Rust need a garbage collector? And the fact is, it doesn't need one. But you'll also find Samsara, and there's a couple other ones. Didn't feel like pulling them out. But the reason projects like this exist is because there's this thing called an arc pointer. Let me get drawing. A-R-C. And what this is a automatic reference counted thing. And what this means is if this is an object and this gets a reference to it, the counter is a +1. So this is this is what Swift uses. Swift uses arc, and I actually really like arc, but it has one problem. So this is object 1. Yeah, we'll just call it O1, and this is O2. Hey, this is oxygen over here. Okay. Anyways, sorry. What? We'll do the. We'll give it some ozone. There we go. This is ozone over here. This is just a very unstable oxygen over here. Sorry, I did a lot of chemistry in school. This could just be a double bond, not a triple. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Forget this. I'll erase it. There we go. All right. So the problem comes into with it. This works really well in this. When this stops referencing it, it will get decremented, -1, and then this object will get deleted because nothing references it. The problem comes in is what if, okay, let me erase this again. The problem comes in, what if this references this and +1's this? Now, the thing over here, we'll call this O0, which looks like OO. I'll put a line through it, O0. If this references this and then dereferences it, these still have references to each other. It's a circular reference. And this is a code smell, for one. There are a very few times this is a legitimate thing to do. It's very few. Isn't the A for atomic in Rust? It might be, but it's still arc. It's still an automatic reference count. It's still a reference count. You can still do this. I know this for sure, certain. You might be right that this doesn't stand for automatic. It might be atomic reference count, but it still suffers from this problem here, which basically happens because both still have valid references. Now, a language like Swift handles this by weak references, which basically means that the reference doesn't have to exist and you have to check it every single time that you use it. But Rust does strong memory guarantees that doesn't allow you to do that. Anyways, this maybe needs to be its own video itself. This was a good article, I thought, because it actually goes into the cycle collection. He actually implemented this, and it's open source, so you can go check it out, which is actually really cool. I can't actually click on things because I don't have internet right now, but you can actually go check it out. And basically, this is solving this problem. I will look for whether it's atomic or automatic. It might be atomic. Let's see. I think maybe he goes into it. Let's see. The RC. Okay, so I guess you were right, but it's still reference counted. I guess atomic does matter because it's thread safe. So here, atomic makes sense because it's thread safe. If you don't understand what atomic means that basically it's one call to switch out. So there can't be a threading issue with an atomic thing. So basically you'll see this in like an atomic integer, basically, which means that it takes one, it happens in one, the words are failing me. I don't want to say cycle, but it's one action to change it. It doesn't have to take two. There's no like bad state. So basically it's thread safe. This means it's thread safe, but it's still reference counted. So this whole thing is still the issue here. Anyways, good article. I would read it. I want to look through their code. I probably can learn quite a few things. I thought it was cool, so. Instruction. That's what it. Thank you. That was the atomic means that it can be done in one instruction. Thank you, Russell. Sorry, sometimes I don't come up with the word right off the top of my head. Streaming still makes me nervous. I know that I've done it a while, but I still get nervous. My back sweat. That's probably too much information, but yeah, it does. Happens. All right. I saw some other Rust things. This was implementing a hash map in Rust, which was cool. I think like this is actually something that would be cool to do in a video and talk about the different things and how you make these different functions and whether it takes like a mutable self-reference or whatnot. I think there's so much that went into this, and that's really cool. This person also does like a really good job. I think they deserve more followers than 12. Like breaking down each of these different things that happen. So I thought that this was a really well done. For Medium articles, this was a really good Medium article, and this was a pretty cool thing to do and then explain. This isn't a perfect hash map. There's a lot more that you could do here, but this is like a very basic hash map and a really good learning exercise. Back to the Java developers. I don't know why I wanted to go with Java developers. Java developers. Glassfish, which is like an open source application server, that does the open source enterprise edition. So basically, Jakarta EE is the enterprise, is the open source version of enterprise. It's almost like Red Hat's. You know how like Rocky Linux is the open source version of Red Hat? That's what this is. And Glassfish is the application server that runs on top of that. And there's a new version out. And I saw that. I thought it was cool. Wanted to give these people a shout out. Again, I don't use Java, but I like to try to give people shout outs when they do cool projects. This is definitely a cool project. I ran into it while at SUSE. So cool. It brings some new things. I don't do these things, so I'm not going to really comment on them, but it comes with new things. All right. This was recommended to me. You know what? I might use an ad blocker for the news. I don't generally use ad blockers, but this is getting unreadable. The GNU debugger GDB adds support for Microsoft Debug Adapter Protocol, which is pretty cool. Which basically the debug adapter protocol basically is this happy layer that allows you to plug in any adapter into it, which means that you can use a bunch of different ones, and they don't have to write it for the IDE specifically. They can just write it for this debug adapter protocol, and it will start to work with anything that supports the debug adapter protocol. So that's pretty cool, and I'm excited to see that that the GNU debugger supports this. I haven't actually used this, but I'm interested in testing it out. This terrifies me. I wish that Windows would stop releasing new versions. They should just stick with one and iterate on it, I think. But Windows 12, yeah? Huh? I don't know. All right. New nanowire sensors is the next step in the Internet of Things. I found this interesting. Do you guys want to see my IoT devices? Should I do some videos on some of them? I keep going back and forth. I'm not sure if... I love working with Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and ESP32 devices. Absolutely love it. I don't know if you guys would like to see some projects. I don't really show projects. I've done just educational stuff. Maybe that's what I need to do, is do some projects alongside my educational stuff so the projects bring people in and are cool and wowy. I don't know. I saw this. It's a set of things talking about the Azure container apps, which I didn't know about before this, but they actually look pretty cool. They look like they're like AWS Fargate, if you've seen Fargate, where you can run a container. And that's kind of seems what it looks like. I actually love this way more than I do things like Lambdas, because containers are built from code that is hosted in a logical repository, and it's really easy to keep track of. It's really easy to do compliance for. Lambdas are much more difficult in my perspective. And you can do those things, but then you start to lose the reason that you have a Lambda function if you have this code in this repository and you have this complicated update process. I like the idea of, hey, I have a container, please run it with enough resources to handle the load on it. And that's what these Azure container apps look like. I didn't know if any of you have actually used them. If you have, or you use Azure and would like to see this because you haven't, I would love to hear from you guys on it. It seemed kind of cool. Not going to lie. This just came up today. Apple fined 8.5 million in France over targeted App Store ads. This actually did surprise me a little bit. Apple has always been really picky about ads. I like to hate on Apple just about as much as the others do. But Apple, as far as privacy goes, is probably better than the rest, which isn't saying they're good, because they do some stuff that I don't appreciate, because a lot of times they're protecting you from others, not from themselves, which is, like I said, better, but also not necessarily good. So this kind of surprised me, because generally I would think it would be one of the other people that got hit with this before it was Apple, but it seemed to be Apple. So that brings us to the end of our news, and now it's all about open source projects. Let's see the IoT projects after learning Rust, using Rust. So actually, good point, Russell. The web server that we're going to make is actually the same web server that powers my lights that aren't on because they're sitting on the floor. But my sound panel's there that manages the lights. It's the same web server. I thought that would be cool because they could actually see it working when they go to build that application. Now the IoT portion of it is C, because I'm lazy and it was easier. But this web server part is written in Rust, so definitely you can see it in action. I actually think that I'm going to make that the first thing in the null cloud, where you can actually sign up for an account and run your own lights off of the null cloud. I thought that would be cool, like if I gave you an API access to it. So yeah, I think that's the first thing we're going to provide, is a light service. All right, so I asked you guys what the most pivotal open source projects were for 2023, and yeah, we have a couple that are like, yeah, of course, and we have a couple interesting ones. Now, I know that we'll start with probably the most well-designed one. It's definitely the null cloud. Going to be a super pivotal piece of equipment. I don't know why it renders white on Linux and not. I think it's because the theme is light and not dark. So my website adapts dynamically to it. Pretty cool. Obviously, this was a joke. Let's move on. The Linux kernel. I think Linux continues to be one of the most pivotal pieces of software out there from year to year for the last 20 years. I think this is an easy shoe-in. We don't need to talk about it. I think this is really the year of Rust. I know that I'm probably biased, but the projects in Rust are maturing. There's no big gaping hole in the Rust ecosystem that I see right now. Years prior, I could point to them and I could be like, these are holes in the ecosystem. They're not either a blatant hole, or the projects are just not mature enough. But at this point, from things like Tokyo to even things like Hyper, I'm seeing a much more well-rounded community around Rust. I also see much larger companies that are supporting and driving some of these open source projects, from Firecracker and in AWS, and even Bottle Rocket in AWS, to the things like Hyper, and Cloudflare has done a lot of their new cutting edge stuff in Rust. So I think 2023 is the year of Rust. And another thing that's helping drive that, WebAssembly. I still have my problems with WebAssembly. One of the biggest problems is there's no really good, and I don't mean this to offend anybody, but there's no really good UI framework for it just yet. But I see work being done on that. I'd like to see, that simple React web framework or Next.js, whichever one. I think people are really on to Next.js right now. I'd like to see that for Wasm. And I know that there's work on that, and I played around with some of them. Whatever. I played around with some of them. They're just not quite there yet. I'm not saying that it's bad work, but I think by the end of 2023, you might see a big WebAssembly framework out there for those. So yeah. My next one here, PyTorch. The potential upcoming recession will be a good test of big tech companies' commitment to Rust. I think you're right. You're probably right. Yep. PyTorch. So recently, OpenAI went from TensorFlow to PyTorch. So they're standardizing OpenAI. You guys probably know what OpenAI is. This happened in 2020, but they went to PyTorch. I do know that they still run some stuff on TensorFlow, but I think that PyTorch, TensorFlow, MXNet, those are probably the three big ones. And if you looked at my list, these were 3 of the 4 big ones that we're going to learn. Are really going to see a lot more understanding and use. Hopefully by the end of this year. Next year, you know how I'm doing a Rust class? My hope and goal is that I learn enough that I can do an intro beginners level ML class at the beginning of next year, or sometime near then. I myself am learning. We're going to have some fun doing it this year, and we're going to try to do some silly stuff, but I think that these are going to be pretty pivotal in the coming year. Mastodon. This is not something I use, and this was actually brought to me by the community. They think that this is going to be pivotal. So we're going to see how it goes. I think pivotal has a couple hurdles to go through to figure out before it really does. But I know that it's gotten a lot of traction at this point. So I'm kind of excited to see how it handles those hurdles and how it progresses in the future. Wait, did I give you guys the next open source thing? Did I tell you guys it? Because if I didn't, the next open source project, the next thing that we're doing is your favorite Rust project. I don't know if I told you, but I meant to. But I need to compile a list, and I need to know what you like using, what's effective and easy. Please, if you do give me a Rust project, a Rust library, a Rust project, please tell me why you like it. Please tell me how you use it if you can. You don't have to. I appreciate anything that you give me, but that way I can better explain it, especially if it's something I haven't used. There's a lot of Rust libraries out there, and I haven't used them all. So that would be great. Yeah, oh yeah, Rust library, Rust project. I usually think of Rust as libraries, so I was thinking of Rust libraries because most of the time I'm using them. But if it's a project that you use standalone, that's also okay. I was looking at libraries though, or thinking that at when I was saying that, but it's fine if it's a project. because I do really want to give people a list of things like, hey, you want a web framework? Here's the top 3 web frameworks. Pick one of these. Here's maybe the pros and cons. I want to make that video for them. You want a gRPC framework? Here's the top 2 for 2023. Here's the pros and cons. You want a whatever. You get the idea. You get the idea. There is not a post in the Discord server you can add it to yet because my computer lost internet. So as soon as I reboot it and get internet back, I can add a link in there, and I will do that as soon as I can if nobody else beats me to it. All right. Well, I think that's it for me today. Remember Tuesdays and Thursdays. I know it's late for Europe. I'm really going to try to do a 10 a.m. on Saturday stream as well. Maybe a little bit longer. The ones on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't promise anything but an hour. If they go well, maybe I'll do 2 hours, but I don't promise anything more than an hour. I've already worked all day. And yeah, so maybe a little longer of one on Saturday, depending on how it goes as well. And yeah, I'll see everybody later.